The wedding that uncovered a deadly secret. One child's life changed everything. I was sitting quietly at the table next to my 7-year-old grandson at my son's second wedding. Suddenly, the boy grabbed my hand tightly and whispered, "Grandma, I want to leave right now." I asked him, "What's wrong?" He trembled and replied, "Grandma, you didn't look under the table, did you?" I slowly lowered my gaze and froze. I took my grandson's hand and we got up in silence. "I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it has reached. I was sitting in the middle of the wedding hall, a ballroom glowing with candlelight, right next to my little grandson, the boy I love more than life itself. Today was the wedding of my son, Alex, to his second wife, Ava. My little boy, Leo, was busy pushing his red toy car back and forth across the immaculate white tablecloth. His clear eyes seemed lost in a world of his own, where the noise of the adults around him didn't exist. I looked at him, and my heart softened. I carefully straightened the tiny bow tie around his neck, a gesture as gentle as if I were caressing the memory of his mother, Maria, whose every tender smile I still remember, as if it were yesterday. The soft melody of the jazz band filled the room, blending with the murmur of conversations and the clinking of wine glasses. The ballroom shimmered with luxurious decorations, arrangements of pristine white roses on every table, and candlelight reflecting off the gleaming silver plates. I looked up, searching for Alex. He was busy going from table to table, toasting and thanking the guests with a radiant smile that seemed to hide the emptiness I knew still lingered in his heart since Maria's passing. In the distance, Ava, my son's new wife, stunning in her beaded wedding dress, posed for photos with her friends. Her smile was perfect, untouched by even a hint of sorrow, as if the whole world belonged to her. I looked at her and felt something strange in my chest, a weird sensation, but I tried to ignore it, telling myself I was just being overly sensitive. Waiters moved gracefully between the tables, serving wine, clearing plates, and arranging napkins. An elderly couple sitting at our table turned to me with kind smiles. "How fast Leo is growing up. How old is he now, Betty?" I smiled softly and replied, "He just turned 7. Time flies." Then I turned to cut a small piece of cake for Leo. He looked up, his eyes shining with gratitude, but he immediately lowered his head again and continued pushing his toy car, as if that little toy was the only place where he felt safe. Suddenly, Leo stopped. His little hands froze, and his round eyes met mine with a seriousness that was not normal for him. I was startled. A bad feeling ran through me. He grabbed my hand tightly. His little fingers were ice cold. In an urgent voice, he whispered, "Grandma, I want to leave right now." His voice trembled, as if he was holding back a fear he couldn't explain. My heart raced. I leaned closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. "What's wrong, my boy? Tell me what it is." Leo shuddered, pressing his lips together. Then he whispered so softly I had to lean closer to hear him. "Grandma, you didn't look under the table, did you?" His words felt like a cold knife through my chest. A terrible anguish grew inside me, making it hard to breathe. I tried to stay calm and stroked his hair, but the look in his panicked eyes kept me from ignoring it. "It's okay, my love. Let your grandma look," I said, trying to make my voice sound calm, though my heart was pounding. Carefully, I lifted the edge of the white tablecloth and looked into the dark space beneath the table, where the wooden legs of the chairs and Leo's little shoes swung, and then I saw it. A small piece of paper, folded in 4, lying right next to Leo's chair. It was so small it almost disappeared in the darkness, but its presence chilled my blood. Leo huddled close to me, his little hand gripping my arm as if seeking refuge. I could feel his rapid breathing. Every tremor told me something was terribly wrong. I crouched down completely and with a trembling hand picked up the paper. Around us, people were still laughing and toasting, but my world had shrunk to just me, Leo, and that damned piece of paper in my hand. I unfolded it. The dim candlelight was enough to read the scribbled words, "Table 8, add shrimp to the child's serving." Just a few words, but they were a direct punch to my heart. I felt the blood turn to ice in my veins and the air stuck in my chest. Leo is severely allergic to shrimp, something my whole family knows perfectly well. A single piece could put his life in danger. Who could have written this? Who could be so cruel on my son's wedding day? I squeezed Leo's hand, feeling his little fingers trembling in mine. I stood abruptly, not caring about the surprised looks from people around us. The elderly couple stopped talking and looked at me with concern. I hugged Leo with all my strength, terrified to let him go. The laughter and music continued, but to me, everything had turned into a heavy, suffocating silence. Memories of other times flooded my mind, taking me away from that gleaming ballroom to the years when our family was still whole. I once thought my son's home would always be filled with laughter, but life, like a sudden gust of wind, extinguished that flame of happiness, leaving behind scars that would never heal. I remember Maria, my first daughter-in-law, the way I remember sunlight streaming through the window at dawn. Her smile was tender and warm. She always made me feel like I truly had a daughter. Maria never raised her voice, never did anything to cause worry. She was one of those people who could make you feel at peace just by being there. I still remember those breezy afternoons in the suburbs of Phoenix when I would visit Alex and Maria's little house. The laughter of Leo, just learning to walk, echoed in the backyard as he chased a colorful rubber ball. Maria would be on the porch with a basket of freshly picked vegetables, smiling as she watched her son. "Mom, Betty, try the chili I made. See what you think," she would say, pride glowing in her voice as she placed a warm bowl in front of me. I would sit there, eating and chatting with her about simple things while Leo crawled on the floor, clinging to his old toy car. But the most beautiful and most painful memory is the night Leo became very sick. His fever was high, his little body burned, and his eyes could barely stay open. Maria held him close, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Mom, Betty, I'm so scared," she whispered, trembling. I sat beside her, placing damp cloths on his forehead, trying to calm her. "Don't worry, honey. He's strong. He'll be okay." But inside, the fear weighed on me like a stone. I stayed up with Maria until dawn. When the first rays of sunlight appeared, Leo's fever finally broke, and he fell asleep in his mother's arms. Maria turned to me, eyes red but smiling faintly. "Thank you, Mom. Without you, I don't know what I'd have done." I just took her hand and squeezed it tightly, as if to tell her I'd always be there for her and for Leo. I thought that little family would be happy forever, like a song that never ends. But one fateful afternoon, everything fell apart. The phone rang while I was washing dishes in the kitchen. A cold voice spoke on the other end. "Mrs. Williams, we regret to inform you there has been an accident." I don't remember hearing the rest. My hands shook so badly I dropped a plate, shattering it on the floor. Maria was gone in an instant. A truck had lost control and hit her car on the highway outside the city. I stood there, paralyzed, feeling the world crumble. Maria's funeral was held on a day of torrential rain. The drops fell endlessly, as if the sky was crying for her too. Leo, only 4 years old, was in my arms, confused, staring at everyone with innocent eyes, not understanding. "Grandma, where is my mommy?" he asked in his little voice. I hugged him tightly, swallowing my tears, and whispered, "Your mommy is in a very beautiful place, my love." But inside, I was shattered. Alex collapsed in front of the coffin, shoulders shaking, unable to speak. I knew he was trying to be strong, but his eyes were empty, as if a part of his soul had gone with Maria. After that tragedy, Alex changed completely. He buried himself in work, leaving home early and returning late, long after Leo was asleep. I understood he was running from his pain, trying to fill the void in his heart with endless work. But Leo, my poor boy, suffered the most. He talked less. His eyes were often sad, as if waiting for a miracle to bring his mother back. I became his only support. I took him to school every morning and sat by his bed every night, rocking him. "Grandma, tell me a story about my mommy," he would ask, and I would tell him, my voice trembling, about how Maria sang him to sleep, how she cut fruit into little pieces to make his favorite dessert. Each story was a way to keep Maria's memory alive, for him and for me. Lucy, my adopted daughter, became a vital part of those days too. With her warm heart and gentle hands, she often came by the house, bringing coloring books or homemade cookies. Lucy loved Leo like he was her own little brother. She would carry him, teach him to read, or sit for hours helping him with his drawings. "Look, Leo, your house turned out prettier than mine," she would laugh, her voice clear as a bell. But sometimes I would catch Lucy looking at Alex when he came home after a long day. It was a deep, meaningful look, one that held something more than simple sibling affection. I saw it, but I chose not to say anything. Maybe I was afraid that if I brought it up, I'd break the fragile stability that was left of our family. Alex's house slowly became devoid of laughter, but thanks to Lucy and Leo, that tiny family flame remained lit, even if only faintly. I did everything possible to keep that flame from going out. But deep down in my heart, I knew that both Alex and I were living with wounds that had never healed. Every time I looked at Leo sleeping, I saw Maria's features on his little face, and my heart would ache all over again. The memory of that afternoon is still as clear in my mind as if time had never passed. I was sitting in my small living room, listening to the sparrows singing in the yard, my heart full of mixed feelings. It was the first time my son, Alex, was bringing Ava home to introduce her. I tried to open my heart. I tried to see this young woman through the eyes of a mother who wanted her son to find happiness again after so much pain. But deep down, I couldn't shake a strange feeling of unease, like a cold wind that made me shiver. That afternoon, Alex arrived later than usual. I was in the kitchen preparing the tacos that Leo loved so much when I heard the door open. Alex came in with a strange glow on his face. His eyes lit up the way they used to when he talked about Maria, full of passion and life. "Mom," he said in a choked voice, leaning against the doorframe, "I want you to meet someone." I stopped what I was doing and looked at him, feeling a bit nervous. "Someone special?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Alex smiled, a smile I hadn't seen in a long time. "Yes, you're going to like her very much," he said, full of confidence. I nodded and wiped my hands on my apron, trying to hide the worry that was starting to grow inside me. After Maria, I wasn't sure anyone could fill the void she had left, not only for Alex, but also for Leo and for me. That night, Ava appeared. She entered my house wearing an elegant light blue dress, her hair perfectly styled in soft waves that framed her face, and her lips painted a gentle red curve of a smile. That smile, I must admit, was charming, as if she had practiced it to please anyone. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Williams," she said in a sweet voice, bowing her head slightly. I smiled back, invited her in, and served her a cup of hot, aromatic coffee. "Your house is so cozy," Ava said, as her eyes scanned the family photos on the wall, where one showed Maria hugging a very tiny Leo. I nodded and thanked her, but her gaze lingered on that photo longer than I would have liked, and I wasn't sure how I felt about that. Dinner went on in an atmosphere I tried to make as warm and friendly as possible. I placed the dishes I'd spent all afternoon preparing on the table: tacos wrapped in corn tortillas, a plate of enchiladas with red sauce, and a fresh salad with mango, Leo's favorite. Alex sat next to Ava, his eyes never leaving her. His happiness showed in every gesture. "Mom, Ava works in marketing at my company. She's very good at what she does," he said, his voice full of pride. Ava smiled and with a delicate but deliberate motion served me an enchilada. "Mrs. Williams, this is delicious. You have to teach me how to make it," she said, giving me a friendly look. I smiled and responded politely, but a small part of me stayed uneasy. There was something about the way she spoke, the way she laughed. It felt like I was watching a very well-staged play. Leo, my grandson, sat at the head of the table, unusually quiet. He, who normally couldn't stop talking about school, just picked at his food without lifting his head once. I noticed he was avoiding Ava's gaze, as if trying to hide in some safe corner. Ava leaned over, took a chocolate bar from her purse, and placed it in front of Leo with a radiant smile. "This is for you. It's very good, Leo," she said, her voice as sweet as honey, as if trying to win him over. But Leo didn't move. His little hands clutched his silverware tightly, and then he simply turned his face away without touching the chocolate. I saw a flash of fear in his eyes, and my heart tightened. Alex frowned, ready to scold his son. "Leo, what's wrong with you? Ava's giving you some candy." I quickly intervened. "It's nothing. He's probably just a little tired. Leave him be, son." Alex sighed, then said nothing more. He turned to pour Ava more wine, trying to lighten the mood. Lucy, my adopted daughter, was also at dinner. She sat across from me, eating quietly, but I noticed her expression darken when Ava took Alex's hand under the table. Lucy has always been very sensitive, and I know she loves Alex like a brother, but sometimes I've wondered if that feeling runs deeper. When Ava took Alex's hand, Lucy's fingers froze over her glass, tightening just a little. She didn't say a word, just lowered her head and continued eating. But that silence felt heavier than any words. I wanted to ask her. I wanted to understand what was making her sad, but I knew it wasn't the right time. After dinner, Ava insisted on washing the dishes, even though I refused several times. "Mrs. Williams, you rest," she said with overflowing enthusiasm. I reluctantly agreed and watched her go into the kitchen, roll up her sleeves, and hum a cheerful tune while she cleaned. I must admit she did everything perfectly. The dishes were neatly stacked, and the sink was sparkling. For a moment I thought, this girl seems very caring. But then, when I went into the living room, I saw Leo sitting and coloring, his little hands clutching a crayon. Ava approached and sat next to him, praising him. "You draw so well, Leo. What is it? Let me see." But Leo immediately dropped the pencil and leaned back, his face showing clear distrust, as if she were a threat. Ava glanced at me and quickly forced a smile, trying to smooth over the awkwardness. "What a shy boy," she said in that same sweet voice. But I saw something strange flicker in her eyes. Meanwhile, Alex didn't notice anything unusual. He was busy pouring more wine, telling funny stories from work, and laughing loudly every time Ava said something witty. The introduction ended with my son completely satisfied, seeing Ava off at the door, his eyes fixed on her as if there were no one else in the world. I stood there, watching them walk away, with a strange feeling in my heart, as if something wasn't quite right. Time passed, and Ava gradually became part of our lives. One weekend morning, with the bright California sun flooding the living room, I was knitting a scarf when Ava appeared, smiling from ear to ear. "Mrs. Williams, I want to take Leo to the park today. Is that okay?" she asked, her voice full of enthusiasm. I looked at Leo, who was sitting on the floor playing with his wooden blocks, his face blank. "Of course. I'm sure he'd love it," I said, forcing a smile. Even though I felt some hesitation inside, Alex had gone to work, and I thought maybe a little fresh air would do Leo good. Ava took Leo's hand and led him toward the door while I watched them leave, a strange heaviness settling in my chest. When they returned, Ava walked in with a triumphant smile. "He had so much fun. He wouldn't stop going down the slide, and he even asked for another ice cream," she said with excitement. But when I looked at Leo, I saw his shirt, dirty, with dried stains on the blue fabric I had ironed that morning. He was silent, holding his toy car in his hand, saying nothing about his outing. "Did you have fun, my boy?" I asked, crouching down to stroke his hair. He just nodded slightly and looked away. I wanted to ask more, to understand why he was so quiet, but Ava cut in with her ever-sweet voice. "I already told you, Mrs. Williams. He loved it." I nodded, but inside me, a small piece of doubt began to form, like the first piece of a puzzle. On another occasion, while Alex was at work, Ava showed up unannounced. I was in the kitchen preparing chili for lunch when I heard her talking to Leo in the living room. At first, her voice was soft, but suddenly I heard a harsh phrase. "Stay still, Leo. Don't make a mess. You're a big boy now, but you still act like a baby." I froze, my hand still over the onion I was chopping, and a chill ran through me. I stepped out of the kitchen, and instantly Ava's tone changed, sickly sweet again, as if nothing had happened. "Our Leo is so clever. Look at the tall tower he built," she said brightly, pointing to the wooden blocks Leo was playing with. But Leo just pressed his lips together and looked at me as if asking for help. I tried to smile and said, "Yes, he's very skilled." But inside, unease grew like a thorn digging into my heart. I tried to calm myself. Surely she just wasn't used to children. Anyone could be a bit clumsy at first. Leo's 7th birthday is a memory I'll never forget. Lucy spent all morning baking a chocolate cake, Leo's favorite. When she brought it in and placed it on the table, candles lit, Leo shouted with joy. His eyes sparkled for the first time in months. "Aunt Lucy, this is my favorite cake," he exclaimed, running to hug her. She smiled, stroked his hair, and told him tenderly, "I made it for you, my love. Eat a lot." I watched them with a warm heart, feeling like the family flame had come alive again. Ava was there too, but she only clapped half-heartedly, standing in the corner with a tired smile. Her only gift to Leo was an indifferent pat on the shoulder and a simple, "Happy birthday, champ." I saw how Leo shrank a little, avoiding her gaze, and my heart ached again. I wanted to say something, but I stayed quiet, telling myself not to get too involved. Another time, Alex took Ava and Leo to the grocery store. I stayed home, but when they returned, I heard Ava's irritated voice. "Leo dropped a whole bag of candy at the checkout, and I had to pay for it. What a clumsy boy." Alex frowned and turned to scold his son. "Leo, you're a big boy now. You have to be more careful." I saw Leo lower his head, his little hands twisting together, his eyes looking to me as if asking for help. I quickly went to him and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Don't worry, my boy. It was just some candy." But inside, I couldn't stop wondering, why did Ava get so angry so easily with a child? Why couldn't she be as gentle as Maria had been? One afternoon, when I went to pick up Leo from school, his teacher pulled me aside and spoke in a low, concerned voice. "Mrs. Williams, lately Leo has been talking less and seems very withdrawn. Is something happening at home?" I froze, but I tried to play it down. "I'm sure it's just the changes, Mrs. Davis. Don't worry." But on the way home, Leo tugged on my blouse and said in a trembling voice, "Grandma, I don't want to go home with Miss Ava." I stopped and knelt down to look into his clear eyes, my heart tightening. "Why do you say that, my love? Miss Ava loves you," I said. But the moment those words left my mouth, I knew I was wrong. Leo shook his head firmly, determination shining in his little gaze. "No, Grandma. She doesn't love me." I stroked his hair, trying to calm him, but inside I couldn't deny that he was telling the truth. Lucy, who was nearby, had heard everything. She turned away silently, but I saw her shoulders move slightly, as if she was holding back a sigh. All those loose pieces, all those little signs. I had seen them, but I had chosen to ignore them. And then, the day of my son's wedding arrived. That afternoon, the golden Florida sun streamed through the wide windows, filling the ballroom with radiant light, as if the whole world wanted to celebrate my son's happiness. I sat at table number 8 beside my grandson, Leo, and my adopted daughter, Lucy. Leo was playing with his red toy car, whispering soft, vroom, vroom sounds under his breath. I looked at him, and my heart filled with tenderness. Lucy, in a simple beige dress, sat across from me, leaning over from time to time to whisper something in Leo's ear with a smile as warm as morning sunlight. "Eat another little piece of bread, my boy," she said, breaking off a small piece for him. I smiled, feeling a little comfort in my heart. Despite all the pain our family had endured, Lucy and Leo were the small flame that still warmed my soul. Alex, my son, looked radiant in his navy blue suit, moving between the tables, toasting with relatives. His smile overflowed with joy, as if he wanted to erase all the dark years that followed Maria's death. I looked at him with a mix of pride and sadness. I wanted so badly to believe that he had finally found happiness, that Ava, the dazzling bride in her beaded gown, would give him a new start. But every time my eyes met Ava's, laughing loudly in front of the cameras, her wine glass never leaving her hand, I felt that same small thorn twist deeper in my heart. Her smile was too perfect, too practiced. The soft jazz music filled the air, blending with cheerful chatter. Waiters moved quietly, serving appetizers, crispy crackers, aromatic cheese dip, and plates of fresh shrimp elegantly arranged. I noticed Leo only took a cracker, then gently pushed the shrimp plate away. I frowned. "Don't you like this, my love?" I asked softly. Leo shook his head, avoiding my eyes, as if hiding something. I wanted to ask more, but a relative interrupted, saying cheerfully, "And Leo's being such a good boy, Betty. Look how big he's gotten." I smiled and replied, "He's a smart little man now." But inside, I couldn't stop worrying. Leo had never refused food like that before. From across the room, I caught Ava watching us. Her smile tightened for a brief second before she turned away to toast with another guest, pretending nothing had happened. I tried to shake off the unease, telling myself I was imagining things. But then everything changed in an instant. Leo, still playing with his toy car, accidentally pushed it too hard and it rolled under the table. He bent down to grab it, but then froze. His wide eyes locked onto something beneath the tablecloth. I leaned down. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Leo pulled out a small folded piece of paper with trembling hands and a pale face. He clutched my hand, whispering urgently, "Grandma, let's go. Please, let's go now." My heart pounded wildly. "What's wrong, my boy?" I tried to keep calm, but his panic spread through me like fire. Trembling, he whispered words that froze my blood. "You didn't look under the table, did you?" His question sliced through me like ice. I slowly crouched down and lifted the tablecloth. The space underneath was dark, and there it was, a small folded paper, lying by his chair. My hands shook as I picked it up. The candlelight was just bright enough for me to read the scribbled words, "Table 8. Add shrimp to the child's serving." Just one line, but it hit me like an electric shock. I crushed the paper in my hand, feeling the world shrink around me until only Leo, that note, and my pounding heart existed. Ava, in her glowing white dress, was still laughing across the room, raising her glass in a toast. Alex was taking photos with his friends, smiling like it was the best day of his life. But for me, everything had turned into a lie, a beautiful mask hiding something terrible. I squeezed the paper until it burned my palm. Leo, my precious grandson, had almost been the target of something evil, right here, in the middle of his father's wedding. I turned to Lucy, who was sitting beside Leo. Her eyes filled with worry when she saw my face. "Take care of Leo, please," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. Lucy nodded, hugging Leo close like a shield. "Where are you going?" she asked softly, fear in her voice. I didn't answer. I didn't even know what I was going to do, only that I had to do something. I hurried out into the hallway, my legs heavy, my heart pounding. Near the bar, a few waiters were chatting and laughing. I spotted David, the young man who had served our table earlier. I walked straight up to him, holding the crumpled paper in front of his face. "Do you know who gave you this?" I asked, my voice sharp. David's smile vanished. His eyes widened in alarm. "Oh my God, that's mine," he stammered. "A woman gave it to me and I dropped it when I was carrying the tray." My heart jumped. "Who gave it to you?" I demanded. He shook his head, backing away. "I don't know her name, ma'am. She just told me to hand it to the chef. I didn't know what it was." Rage flared in my chest. "Do you understand what you've done?" I hissed, my voice trembling. "My grandson is severely allergic to shrimp. One bite could have killed him." David turned pale, his hands shaking. "Ma'am, I swear I didn't know. I was just following orders." The other waiters began whispering, glancing nervously between us. I felt the heat rise in my face, but I forced myself to stay composed. From inside the ballroom, the MC's cheerful voice echoed, announcing the main course. Time was running out. I took a deep breath and steadied myself. I couldn't stay silent now. I walked back into the ballroom, gripping that note like it was my only weapon. The lights glowed softly, the music played on, and the guests laughed, completely unaware. Leo's frightened eyes met mine. I took his trembling hand. Then I stood up. "One moment, please," I said, my voice cutting through the music. "Before we eat, I have something to say." The room fell silent. Every face turned toward table 8. I raised the paper high. "Who wrote this note, asking to add shrimp to the child's meal at table 8? A ripple of whispers spread through the room. Alex rushed over, confused. "Mom, what's going on?" I slid the paper toward him. "Read it," I said coldly. He read it, his face going pale. "What does this mean?" he asked, his voice trembling. Before I could answer, Ava appeared, her expression a perfect mask of concern. "What is all this? Some kind of bad joke?" she asked softly, but I caught the flicker of panic in her eyes. "My grandson is allergic to shrimp," I said, my voice shaking with fury. "This isn't a joke. This is attempted murder." Gasps filled the room. Guests stared in disbelief. Ava laughed nervously. "Please, Mrs. Williams, there's no name on that paper. Are you really believing a child's story?" she said mockingly, trying to make me look like a paranoid old woman. The whispers grew louder. "Maybe it's a misunderstanding," someone murmured, but I could feel the truth burning in my chest. Ava's composure, her fake smile, it was all crumbling. Suddenly, Lucy stood up, still holding Leo tightly. Her voice trembled with rage. "That's enough, Ava!" And before anyone could react, she slapped her hard. The sound echoed through the ballroom like thunder. Everyone froze. Ava's hand flew to her cheek, her eyes wide with shock. "You see? She's jealous. She's trying to ruin my wedding," Ava sobbed, turning to Alex. Lucy's voice cracked, but her words cut through the room like a knife. "The only wicked person here is you. You tried to hurt an innocent child at your own wedding." The guests stared in horror. Ava's mask began to crumble. Alex looked lost, glancing between us, unable to decide what to believe. Ava tried to recover her calm. "This is slander," she snapped. "Someone must have planted that note to ruin our wedding." But her voice shook. Her hands trembled. I slammed my hand on the table, the sound echoing through the silence. "That's enough!" I shouted. "David, come here!" The young waiter stepped forward, pale as a ghost. I held up the paper. "Confirm it. Is this the note you got?" David nodded, his voice shaking. "Yes, ma'am. A woman from another table gave it to me. I dropped it by accident." Ava's voice cut sharply through the tension. "You're mistaken. I don't know anything about that." But before she could say more, a small, trembling voice broke through the noise. Gloria, Ava's younger sister, stood up, tears streaming down her face. "It wasn't me. It was Ava," she cried. "She told me to give the note to the waiter. I didn't know what it was." A collective gasp filled the ballroom. Ava spun toward her sister, fury twisting her face. "Shut up, Gloria! How dare you lie about your own sister?" But Gloria only cried harder. "I'm not lying. You told me to do it." Her words sliced through the room like lightning. Guests stared at Ava in disbelief. Lucy's voice rose again, calm but deadly. "If you keep denying it, We can check the security cameras in the ballroom. Everything will be cleared up in a moment." Her words were like a stone thrown into a lake, causing waves of panic. Ava's face turned ashen, her lips tightened, and her gaze desperately searched for an escape. But there was no way out now. She didn't say another word, and that silence, for me, was the clearest confession of all. Alex froze, his trembling hand resting on Leo's shoulder, looking in horror at the woman he had just called his wife, Ava. His voice broke as if he were trying to hold on to the hope that it was all a misunderstanding. But his gaze, moving from the paper to Leo, said it all. I saw how his heart broke, just like mine had when he discovered the truth. An uncle stood up, shaking his head in disgust. Unbelievable. Such wickedness on a day of celebration. His voice trembled, barely holding back his anger. After Lucy's challenge about checking the security cameras, a deadly silence took over the ballroom. Ava, the woman I once tried to accept as part of my family, stood there pale, her lips pressed together, looking for one last excuse. But the truth was out, and she had nowhere left to run. Alex, my son, walked slowly toward her, his face tense and eyes red. "Ava, tell me the truth. Is it true?" His voice trembled, begging for a glimmer of hope that it was all a mistake. But I knew, deep down, he already felt the painful truth. Ava took a step back, trying to force a twisted smile, but her eyes betrayed her panic. "You don't believe me?" she said in a broken voice, trying to cling to the last drop of Alex's trust. "It's all their plan. I didn't do anything." But her words sounded weak, like a dying wind before a storm. I looked at her, my heart heavy with pain and indignation. The woman I thought would bring my son happiness was now standing in front of me like a stranger, a danger I hadn't seen before. Lucy, my adopted daughter, placed a hand on Alex's shoulder and said in a trembling voice she was struggling to control, "Leo almost died because of this woman." Her words were as sharp as a knife. Ava yelled desperately, "Shut up! You're just a jealous intruder!" But Lucy didn't move. Though she was trembling with rage, she stood firm like a shield for Leo. "How dare you call me jealous?" Lucy replied coldly. "Look this child in the eyes and tell me you didn't try to hurt him." Leo clung to me tightly, his little hand squeezing mine as if he feared being pulled into that nightmare again. The guests began to stand up. The festive atmosphere had completely shattered. A family relative, Mr. Johnson, slammed the table in anger. "This is a disgrace. We can't let this go." Murmurs of support spread like waves, drowning Ava in everyone's contemptuous stares. Alex, torn between truth and love, cried out, his voice breaking with pain and outrage. "Leo is my son. You tried to kill my son at our own wedding." His words struck Ava like a knife, and she burst into tears. But I knew those weren't tears of regret, only tears of being caught. I placed the paper on the table and declared in a firm, unwavering voice, "Anyone who tries to harm my grandson will never have the right to set foot in this family." My words echoed, clear and final like a sentence. Ava looked up, her eyes burning with fury, but I saw defeat behind them. She had lost, not just to me, but to the truth. The hotel security staff approached and, in a polite but firm tone, asked Ava to leave the ballroom. "Ma'am, please come with us," one of them said coldly. Ava stepped back, searching for help, but no one stood by her. Many guests shook their heads, leaving their half-empty glasses and sighing with disappointment. "Unbelievable," one whispered. "How can someone be so cruel?" Another murmured, horrified. Alex stood motionless, his hands gripping his head as if trying to hold his collapsing world together. Then, as though he no longer had the strength to stand, he slowly knelt before Leo, his voice choked with emotion. "Son, forgive me. Forgive me, my boy, for not protecting you." Tears streamed down his face, and I felt my heart split in two. I helped Alex stand, squeezing his shoulders. Luckily, we stopped it in time, I said gravely but with confidence. This false happiness has to end here and now. I looked at Ava, who was being escorted out amidst looks of disgust, and deep down I knew she never was and never would be a part of this family. In the days following that nightmare wedding, our family lived through a silent storm, wounds still bleeding and questions floating unanswered. I felt as if I had just woken from a nightmare where I almost lost Leo, my precious grandson, the one I love more than life itself. The story of that failed wedding spread everywhere, from our quiet suburban street to the gossip of distant relatives. The house phone wouldn't stop ringing. Some blamed Alex for trusting Ava blindly. Others sympathized with Leo, the innocent child who was nearly the victim of evil. But for me, every call was just a painful reminder of what we had endured. Alex withdrew after that day. He was no longer the radiant man in the navy blue suit from the wedding. Instead, he moved through life quietly, driving Leo to and from school in silence, his eyes full of pain and guilt. The name Ava became like a curse, never again spoken in our home. I looked at Alex with a heavy heart, but I knew he needed time to heal, to find himself again after being betrayed by the woman he loved. I didn't blame him. Love can blind anyone, but I also knew that we had to rise again as a family. I kept caring for Leo as I had since Maria passed. I cooked his favorite dishes, cheesy pasta and soft pudding, trying to bring him comfort and safety. But the one who truly healed Leo's soul wasn't me. It was Lucy, my adopted daughter. Every morning, she carefully packed his lunch for school, choosing every item to avoid shrimp or anything that might harm him. She even slipped in a small note for the teacher, explaining Leo's allergy, complete with a smiling face drawn in crayon. "Aunt Lucy, you draw so well," Leo would exclaim, opening his lunchbox. His eyes would shine again, and I could see a piece of his innocence return. Every afternoon, Lucy took Leo to the nearby park. I often watched them from a distance, she teaching him to fly a kite, showing him how to hold the string so it soared high. Once, Leo fell from the slide and Lucy ran to him, brushing the dust from his clothes. "It's okay, my love. I'm here," she whispered. Leo's bright laughter filled the air, a sound I thought I had lost forever. It became a soothing balm for my soul. I looked at Lucy with deep gratitude. She wasn't just a sister to Leo, she was a second mother, filling the void Maria had left behind. One night, when Leo had a fever, I saw Lucy sit beside his bed all night, gently pressing cool cloths to his forehead and telling him the story of a brave sparrow who flew through a storm. I stood quietly at the door, watching. I noticed Alex watching too, his gaze long, full of remorse and gratitude, as though realizing something he had missed for years. I didn't say a word. I quietly stepped away, giving them space. But in my heart, I began to hope. Maybe there was light at the end of our family's dark tunnel. One evening, during one of our rare family dinners, Leo suddenly looked up from his plate of warm pasta, his clear little eyes fixed on Lucy. "I want Aunt Lucy to be my mommy," he said softly, as if he'd been thinking about it for a long time. The table went silent. Lucy blushed, lowering her head and gripping her spoon tightly, trying to hide her embarrassment. Alex froze, tears glimmering in his eyes, as if Leo's words had struck something deep within him. I smiled gently and placed my hand on Alex's shoulder. "True happiness, son, doesn't come from a dazzling wedding dress," I said warmly. "It comes from a sincere heart that knows how to love." Alex looked at me, then at Lucy, and I saw a spark of hope return to his eyes. Time passed, and Ava disappeared from our lives completely, like a toxic wind that had finally blown away. Leo became a happy boy again, always close to Lucy, clutching his red toy car and the drawing she'd made for him. Watching him run and play in the yard filled me with relief and a lingering ache for all he had endured. Then one day, Alex took Lucy's hand, turned to me, and said in a trembling but firm voice, "Mom, I know I made a mistake. I was blind. I put Leo in danger. But this time, I don't want to lose the person who has truly been there for our family." Lucy lowered her head, her cheeks flushed, but a radiant smile spread across her lips. Tears rolled silently down my face as I nodded. "Son," I said, my voice breaking, "the only thing I want is for you and Leo to be happy." That night, after Leo fell asleep, I sat by the window, watching the silver moon stretch over the quiet street. Its soft glow reminded me that no matter how dark life becomes, light always finds a way to break through. I whispered to myself, family isn't always made of blood. Sometimes it's chosen, with love and courage. After that grim wedding, a new chapter full of light truly began for my family. I looked toward the yard, where the kite Lucy and Leo had flown the day before still hung in the branches. And I knew, though old wounds might never fully heal, we would move forward, together, with love and strength as our guide. After all we'd been through, I understood something important. There are losses that can never be replaced, betrayals that break the heart, but true love will always be the light that shows the way. Family isn't just built on blood ties, but on choices, the courage to protect each other from darkness. Real happiness comes not from appearances, but from sacrifice and genuine affection. I want everyone to remember to listen, to let your heart guide you. Because sometimes a small act of attention can save a life. It's kindness that pulls us out of the nights that seem endless. The story you just heard has been modified in names and places to protect those involved. It's not told to judge, but to make people reflect. How many mothers are suffering in silence inside their own homes? I truly wonder, if you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you choose silence to keep the peace, or face everything to reclaim your voice? I'd love to know your thoughts, because every story can become a candle, lighting the path for others. God always blesses us, and I believe courage will lead us to brighter days. Meanwhile, on the final screen, I'll leave you two of the channel's favorite stories. I'm sure they'll surprise you.